Welcome to Film Forum Presents, a podcast featuring special live events recorded at our theater located at 209 West Houston Street in downtown Manhattan. In this episode, Film Forum presents a Q&A with James Longley, who produced, directed, and photographed the new documentary, Angels Are Made of Light, a deeply humanistic, stunningly beautiful portrait of three young brothers contemplating their future in war-torn Kabul, Afghanistan. The Q&A, which took place on the film's opening night, Wednesday, July 24th, 2019, was moderated by Film Forum Events Manager Joseph Berger.
Welcome, everyone. My name is Mike Majori. I do programming of the premieres with Film Forum director Karen Cooper. And I want to welcome you to the U.S. theatrical premiere of James Longley's Angels Are Made of Light. James was here at Film Forum once before with his previous documentary, Iraq in Fragments, which was nominated for an Academy Award for Best Documentary and won several prizes at the Sundance Film Festival. He is a MacArthur Fellow, and he also directed the film Gaza Strip, which explored the second Palestinian uprising. I think James has shown in film after film a talent for immersing audiences in the perspectives of his characters, and an extraordinary talent for cinematography and lighting. He has often shown the effects of war and ethnic divisions through the eyes of children, and in Angels Are Made of Light, he applies these skills in telling the stories of three brothers in Kabul, as well as their families and community. I'm very happy that James came all the way from Seattle, Washington to be with us tonight. Please welcome James Longley.
Thank you, Mike. So I don't want to say too much right now before the screening, but just welcome to the opening night screening of Angels Are Made of Light. I'll be here after the show, which is 2 hours long, so if you have that amount of patience, you can stay and ask me anything you want. I'll be happy to answer you. Enjoy the show.
Folks, please welcome back director James Longley.
Thanks.
Congratulations on a beautiful film. I know we want to hear from all of you folks, but I first just want to ask what brought you to Kabul, Afghanistan in the first place. Was it the idea of the film, or did the film come out of finding yourself there?
Well, so I first had the idea for the film, and I did not first go to Afghanistan. I mean, I was late. I was making a film about the Gaza Strip in 2001, and I finished in 2002. And by that time, this 9/11 had happened. The United States had invaded Afghanistan, and we were about to invade Iraq. So I went from Gaza to Iraq, and I made Iraq in Fragments, and Sorry's Mother, the short film. And then from there, I thought, okay, well, it was 2006 and 2007, and I thought, what will I do next? And I thought, well, the next country the United States is going to want to invade is Iran, so I should go to Iran. And I went to Iran, and I was there for about 1.5 years between 2007 and 2009, and I was eventually forced to leave because of the Green Uprising in June of 2009, around the elections. And I was trying in Iran to make this same kind of film, a school-based film, because of access. I mean, it's because you can't film in people's houses in a conservative society. There's just no way that you can take your camera into people. The neighbors will talk, and people won't have. You won't be able to do that for years and years. So you need a situation which is kind of stable. A school is good for that. Yeah. So in Iran, I was in a boarding school up in the mountains in the Alamut Valley. And then, the Green Uprising happened, and all the foreign journalists had to leave the country at one time. And even though my project didn't have anything to do with the elections and all the chaos around the elections, even though I was filming that also, just because I had also permission to do that. But anyway, so I was kicked out of Iran. Then I took the film to Pakistan. And I was filming in an orphanage in Rawalpindi, it used to be a girls' school, I think before partition. This beautiful place, and it was just gorgeous old architecture, and it had been turned into this orphanage for kids from around the country. And so it was fascinating. And in Pakistan, as an American, you can't necessarily, at that time especially, travel everywhere and film everything you want. So having a place where an orphanage where people were coming from all over, including from the tribal areas and the different places in the country where it was difficult for me to go, but there would be these people who lived there and knew all about that. So it was a way for me to kind of explore Pakistan in one place and also have access, because it's a boys' orphanage and there are no women, so it's not difficult to film for me as an American man. But then, of course, in Pakistan, also there were problems because, different things. But in the end, it was the assassination of Osama bin Laden, and then the United States Congress cut some funding to Pakistan, and they became very angry about that, and they kicked out a lot of American passport holders. I was actually kicked out of Pakistan twice, and the first time was something different. It was about this guy Raymond Davis, this CIA contractor, security guy, who killed some people in Lahore. On the streets because he thought they were going to rob him or something. He was a former Blackwater guy, and they put him in prison. They were going to put him on trial, and then Obama said, he's our diplomat, and so they flew him out of the country on a military jet to London. And on the same morning, before it was even announced in the news, my translator got a call from the Ministry of Interior telling me that I had to leave the country within 48 hours. And that happened to a lot of Americans there also. So I kept on getting kicked out of these countries, and I couldn't finish my film. And luckily I had this MacArthur Award, which is like, it's a lot of money if you put it all together, but they give it to you over 5 years, right? So basically, after taxes, I was getting like $70,000 a year, which is like a nice salary, and you can move around with that amount of money, right? So you can do whatever you want, in essence, in a place which isn't that expensive. And so, I had enough money to buy equipment and fly and hire people, and I worked in Pakistan for 2 years on that money from 2009 to 2011, and then when I was kicked out of Pakistan, I took my project to Afghanistan, and from 2011 till 2015, when the money ran out, I filmed in Kabul. But I didn't immediately come to the school. I looked at like 8 different schools, and also the biggest orphanage in Kabul, and also 3 different hospitals. I looked at village schools and city schools and all kinds of different things, and I finally just decided on this school because I thought it's great. It looks amazing, and it's in this old destroyed mosque, so you can tell a story about history at the same time that you're telling a contemporaneous story, and so I get permission from the ministries, Foreign Ministry, Ministry of Interior, Ministry of Education, and the passport office and all these different entities that you need papers from. And then having those papers in hand, I'm able to go to a school and say, look, I have permission from the government to film here. Will you allow me to do it? And if they agree, then I begin interviewing teachers and students, and just with a dictaphone or with any small recorder, just to see who can talk, who has something to say, because because the people in the film are going to narrate the film, and so you need them to be people who can talk in front of a microphone, aren't too shy, and they're willing to be filmed. So essentially, that's it. I mean, I was looking for a way to put Americans or any foreign audience or anyone in Afghanistan, because we're not going to go there, right? Most people aren't going to get on a plane and go to Afghanistan in their lives, but we still have to know about it. I mean, this is our longest war. The United States has been fighting a war in Afghanistan for almost 20 years. Nobody knows anything about Afghanistan. They don't even know, what ordinary life is like. In the slightest, I think most Americans can't even picture what it's like there. I couldn't picture what it was like. And so in that case, I see an opportunity as a filmmaker to make something which hasn't been seen before. And so the main ambition, it was like, most filmmakers, it's very popular in documentary filmmaking to make documentaries that are like poor man's fiction. They should have a main character, and that character should have an arc, and there should be drama and a problem that they have to solve or overcome or something like that. And that's what most documentary filmmakers try to do. Documentary filmmakers love to say that we are all storytellers. We're storytellers. But I don't believe personally that stories are real, or that the real world is made up of a bunch of stories. I just think that's just Hollywood projecting itself onto the documentary genre, basically. And kind of the financialization of the documentary genre by the more important by the more financially important fiction industry. But I think if you want to make a documentary, so you should really try to show life as it is in these cycles of seasons and time passing and people growing older and, you know, things happening at the speed that they happen in life in a way. But of course you have to do it in a way that people can actually watch, you know, for 90 minutes or 2 hours. So,
and you were there for 3 years.
Three and a half years.
So you had the
but I was
luxury
filming for 3 years.
Yeah, you had the luxury to capture a lot of change in this community.
Yes, I was really privileged and lucky to be able to stay there for that long and to be able to work for that long because the government allowed me to do it because, well, I don't know why exactly, but you know, the United States does support this government, and so when an American comes there and says, I want to film something, they're more likely to help me than in, say, Pakistan, for example, or Iran even. But, yeah.
You mentioned the access that you didn't have to females in Pakistan at the orphanage.
Well, there
that
just weren't any females there, and that's the reason that
it was a boys' orphanage, right?
That was able to film there.
Was it similar here at this school? Because there's a noticeable lack of female students that we see.
The thing is that the reason I mention it is because I mean, here in the school, 80% of the teachers are women. Most of most people there are women. So. But the majority of them would not allow me to film in their classrooms because there are different standards of modesty, and you know they don't want people to talk about them, and they just don't know how they're going to be portrayed, and so there's a risk to being filmed by some American foreigner, especially when the government is about to be abandoned by, you know, the Americans and the Taliban are about to take power again, and people are going to say, well, you know, when the Americans were here, you cooperated with them and so on. So there's a risk for people, and not everyone is ready to take that risk and be on film. Politically, socially, there are risks for people. And so... there are women, in this case there are women in the school. What I'm not able to do is film inside people's houses, and that's also true in Pakistan. Like if there were a woman coming into that orphanage to work during the daytime, that would be okay. If she agreed to be on film, then it would be possible. The thing that's difficult is actually going into a private space like a house where the neighbors are going to say, why is this American coming into your house with a camera? What are they doing in there? You know, usually the accusation is pornography. So that's just uncomfortable for the families, and so to make it comfortable, filming in a school takes the pressure off an individual, and you basically, and also even though I knew that, you know, this character and that character, this person and that person are the main characters in the film, I nonetheless pretended that I'm filming really everyone, and I would do all kinds of close-ups of all kinds of people that I never intended to use in the movie, just to give the impression that everybody's going to be on film, and so no one is under any particular individual pressure. So there are a lot of these kinds of political maneuvers that I had to do in order to have the access and have it for that long. I had to find this kind of tenable situation. Yeah.
Well, let's hear from the audience. If anyone has a question, this gentleman down here, David, just wait for the microphone where... we ask that you ask your question in the microphone.
Hi, wonderful, wonderful film.
Thank you.
The question I had is, in just what you're talking about right now, with all the permissions that you needed to collect from the government, was there a level of scrutiny that fell upon you when you were filming? Like, you know, was there a level of censorship or?
Oh, from the government?
Yes.
No, not at all. Not at all. You know, one good thing about the Karzai administration was that they're really open to the media. They really did have free media under Karzai. And I think still in Afghanistan you can say, I mean, there's a lot of threats to journalists, and journalists are, you know, often attacked and killed, and different things happen, but that's because there is a free media, and people can say what they want, for the most part. There are risks, of course, like always, but...
This gentleman right here.
Hi there. Thanks so much for this. It's really a privilege to be here, and I also realize that I'm the second white male to ask a question at the very beginning of the Q&A. But assalamu alaikum, and thank you for this. And what are maybe some limitations that you had to let go of during the process of making this film, either while you were in Kabul or in post-production, that you feel might have shaped the story of this film. So what are some limitations that you weren't able to address that might have shaped this film in some way?
Well, the limitations that I already spoke of not being able to like film a family at home, for example. That shapes the kind of film that I'm going to make, those limitations. That's the main limitation, is these social limitations of where you can film and where you can't film, who you can film and whom you can't film. Those are the main things that determine, what I'm able to do. I could have made a film in a hospital, for example. Probably it would have been more complicated with the permissions and, everything. A school is, in a way, convenient because it's the same people all the time and they're just getting older and they know you after a while and you're just a fixture there. And if the teachers accept you, then the students will accept you because they just think, well, the teachers are in charge and they know what they're doing. And so, you know what I mean? So after a while, as long as you have cultivated this access in a patient and careful way, where people know that people understand what you're doing because you explain it to everybody, and not only the people in the school, but the people all over the community have to agree. And no one can come and say, what's this person doing? I heard a rumor that he's doing X, Y, and Z bad thing, or, you know what I mean? You have to manage people's expectations and their kind of their you have to let people know what you're doing. And so a great deal of the filmmaking is really this kind of community politics. Like I would go to the community leaders and all kinds of people who never appear in the film and talk to them about it and show them stuff and, so just in order to maintain access, because I didn't just want the school. The school is just a gateway into the society. So I really wanted the school, then the neighborhood, and then the broader city and, and the history and so on, and I wanted to keep on making it larger, but to do it in these kind of baby steps, like slowly going into a pool or something, so at the end of it, you just feel more confident. That's the whole purpose of the movie, is to make Americans feel comfortable with the idea of Afghanistan in a way that, that you watch the film and then you'll think, well, okay, now I really understand a lot more about Afghan society than I did before, and I can really imagine it in my mind. That's the main thing, is being able to have this kind of mental model of a place and the people who live there and what kinds of things they're doing and worrying about and thinking about. That's what I wanted to create. I'm not interested, as I mentioned before, in this kind of storytelling form of documentary. I just don't think it has any purpose.
What was your experience like living there, not as a documentarian, but as a civilian?
Well, it was fine. I lived in an ordinary house with like this thin wooden door that anyone could have kicked in. It opened onto the street. People would knock on my door and I would answer the door. We didn't have any security or anything. I mean, when I lived in Iraq, we had a Kalashnikov in the house that they showed me how to use. You know what I mean? I never fired it, but but in Afghanistan there was nothing like that. There was like zero security around. Well, there was a ministry behind our house, and so there was some security in the area, but mostly, we would, like, the suicide bombings would rattle the windows, but that was kind of the extent of our interaction with the kind of the security apparatus of Kabul and their targets, the targets of the them as targets of the suicide bombers. But for myself, look, I was really lucky. You can always be in the wrong place at the wrong time. There were a lot of things that I filmed, like this Ashura, this religious ceremonies that, like the year before I filmed, there was a major suicide bombing that killed 50 people in the middle of that. And so I was always aware that when I'm filming these things in these crowded, religiously charged, controversial situations, that there can be major bombings, as there are all the time in Kabul, bombings, big bombings. And so that was a risk. And there's an intensified risk of kidnapping as an American. You're a foreigner, you're worth something. You're kind of like a potentially commodity that can be sold to, you can be kidnapped by a criminal group, and by that criminal group sold to some group which is politically motivated or religiously motivated. And, that's a possibility and sometimes happens, but I didn't ever really feel in danger exactly. I mean, there were times I remember hiking up on the big hill over Kabul, and there was this kind of 18-year-old Pashtun soldier up there, with his weapon, and he had me kneeling on the ground, pointing his Kalashnikov at me, and saying, I don't give a damn about this government, and I'll kill anybody and all this stuff. And I was like, come on, I've got places to go.
Do we have a question in the back there, David, all the way in the back?
Thank you. That was a wonderful film indeed. And I'm wondering, did the people in the film get to see the film?
Yes.
And what sort of reaction or comments?
Well, I wasn't there at the time myself. I mean, I haven't been back to Afghanistan since 2015. And I sent them a copy over the internet without subtitles. And they showed it they brought in, like, my translator and associates kind of brought in all the families and all the kids, and with the exception of the women. There were no women there, to be fair. But and they showed the film on a big TV over dinner, and apparently everyone really was impressed by the movie. And from everything I heard, the reaction was very good. There are some points in the film, like where the youngest brother says, my father doesn't love me, and that kind of thing. And they're watching the film. It's the kid is in the room with the father. It's uncomfortable, but it's also years prior at that point, because it took 2.5 years just to edit the movie. So it might have been like 4 years in the past when he said that, and so that kind of like softened the times change, people change, kids grow up, but the reaction was good. I mean, people like the film, as far as I can tell, and I've shown it a lot in different festivals, and Afghan people come and see the film, and the reaction has so far, as far as I know, been universally positive. And I've done interviews on like the Afghans of the DC, Washington DC area, for example, like Facebook groups and things like that will invite me on to do interviews. So far, I haven't had any Afghans say, why are you misrepresenting us like this? On the contrary, I have people speak up in the audience and say, thank you for the movie. I'm Afghan, and you really showed it how it is. And so far, I'm really gratified that we appear to have been mostly successful in not showing an inaccurate picture of Afghanistan that Afghans themselves wouldn't countenance.
I think we have time for just one more quick question. Maybe this gentleman right here, David.
Hi. It's a great film. Cinematographically, it was just beautiful. I'm a journalist who's also been to Afghanistan a few times. But my questions were, how did you decide to sort of focus on that particular family and that particular child, and sort of deciding the narrative after filming over a year to begin and end with him, his kind of going back to school, then kind of not being able to go back to school. And then the other question is so two questions, the scene where he's in the election, where the guy's pushing him to vote for Abdallah. Did you know what was happening as you were filming it?
No.
Okay.
I mean, I knew that there was an altercation, an argument, and so I could guess but I mean, my Dari isn't good enough to know exactly what they're saying at the time. And the earlier part of your question, the
figuring out the narrative,
like the weakness of this film, I think, from the audience point of view, like if I could change anything, but I can't, but it would be that I would not have three brothers who look very, very similar. So it becomes like difficult to know which one we're listening to. Also, it's 3 years; they grow up, so it's doubly difficult. And I think that's the hardest thing for the audience with this movie. And it would have been, it might have been just a cleaner view or like a viewing experience if the characters had been more easily physically discernible, between each other. But and so I mean, to answer your question, like there's one kid who's the kind of the smart, scholarly kid, the middle brother, Sorab, and he is different from the kid who is in school and then is working and then out of, and all this stuff. So anyway, but it's just I chose this family because the mother was a teacher, and she came to us because she had heard that we were like, I interviewed 100 different kids in different schools for this movie, and she heard that we were having problems because we would like start filming with some family, and then they would change their mind after a week, and we were having, and she just came to us and said, well, why don't you film my family? And so we did, and gradually we incorporated more people into it, the teachers and friends from in the neighborhood and stuff like that, and just to make it more, make it less of an individual story arc and more of a community film. Because I want the group picture. Afghanistan isn't individuals. Afghanistan is groups of people, and the Afghanistan is driven by group dynamics, not individual dynamics. And so it's fundamentally different, maybe, than how people think of society in the United States, where it's all kind of like focused on the individual and their story. A place like Afghanistan or Iran, it's about the group. You can't be outside the group and survive in this kind of environment. You have to be part of society. And so I wanted the film to reflect this reality, because otherwise you're not really, as an audience member, you won't really get the feeling of it. And so, and that's also why widescreen, so I can have these groups of people and not just this one individual, and you know what I mean? And so, yeah, that's my philosophy behind the choices.
Well, thank you very much, James, for being with us tonight.
Thank you so much.
Let's continue the conversation out in the lobby. Thank you guys for coming.
Thanks for coming.
Thank you for listening to Film Forum Presents. Special thanks to Grasshopper Film for making this event possible. If you like what you just heard, please be sure to subscribe to get future episodes and rate and review so that more movie lovers can find us. Film Forum is an independent nonprofit cinema, and our doors have been kept open for nearly 50 years thanks to the invaluable support of our members and donors. Please visit www.filmforum.org for details on membership, as well as information and showtimes for our current programming. See you at the movies.